Chapter 3 of Lorna Doone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shirley Anderson. Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore. Chapter 3. The Warpath of the Doones. From Tiverton town to the town of Oare is a very long and painful road, and in good truth the traveller must make his way, as the saying is, for the way is still unmade, at least on this side of Dulverton, although there is less danger now than in the time of my schooling, for now a good horse may go there without much cost of leaping, but when I was a boy the spurs would fail, when needed most, by reason of the slough cake. It is to the credit of this age, and our advance upon fatherly ways, that we have now laid down rods and faggots, and even stump oaks here and there, so that a man in good daylight need not sink if he be quite sober. There is nothing I have striven at more than doing my duty way warden over Exmoor. But in those days, when I came from school, and good times they were too, full of a warmth and fine hearth comfort, which are now dying out, it was a sad and sorry business to find where lay the highway. We are taking now to mark it off with a fence on either side, at least when a town is handy, but to me this seems of a high pretence, and a sort of landmark and channel for robbers, though well enough near London, where they have earned a racecourse. We left the town of the two fords, which they say is the meaning of it, very early in the morning, after lying one day to rest, as was demanded by the nags, sore of foot and foundered. For my part too, I was glad to rest, having aches all over me, and very heavy bruises, and we lodged at the sign of the White Horse Inn, in the street called Gold Street, opposite where the souls are of John and Joan Greenway, set up in gold letters, because we must take the homeward way at cockcrow of the morning. Though still John Fry was dry with me of the reason of his coming, and only told lies about father, and could not keep them agreeable, I hoped for the best, as all boys will, especially after a victory, and I thought perhaps father had sent for me because he had a good harvest, and the rats were bad in the corn chamber. It was high noon before we got to Dulverton that day, near to which town the river Exe and its big brother Barle have union. My mother had an uncle living there, but we were not to visit his house this time, at which I was somewhat astonished, for we needs must stop for at least 2 hours, to bait our horses thorough well, before coming to the Black Bog way. The bogs are very good in frost, except where the hot springs rise, but as yet there had been no frost this year, save just enough to make the blackbirds look big in the morning. In a hearty black frost they look small, until the snow falls over them. The road from Bampton to Dulverton had not been very delicate, yet nothing to complain of much, no deeper indeed than the hocks of a horse, except in the rotten places. The day was inclined to be mild and foggy, and both nags sweated freely, but Peggy carrying little weight, for my wardrobe was upon Smiler, and John Fry grumbling always, we could easily keep in front, as far as you may hear a laugh. John had been rather bitter with me, which methought was a mark of ill taste at coming home for the holidays, and yet I made allowance for John, because he had never been to school, and never would have chanced to eat fry upon condition of spelling it. Therefore I rode on, thinking that he was hard set, like a saw, for his dinner, and would soften after tooth work. And yet at his most hungry times, when his mind was far gone upon bacon, certes he seemed to check himself, and look at me as if he were sorry for little things coming over great. But now at Dulverton we dined upon the rarest and choicest victuals that ever I did taste. Even now at my time of life to think of it gives me appetite, as once and a while to think of my first love makes me love all goodness. Hot mutton pastry was a thing I had often heard of from very wealthy boys and men, who made a dessert of dinner, and to hear them talk of it made my lips smack, and my ribs come inwards. And now John Fry strode into the hostel with the air and grace of a short-legged man, and shouted as loud as if he were calling sheep upon Exmoor. "Hot mutton pastry for 2 travellers, and number 5, in 5 minutes. Dishin up in the tin with the gravy, zame as I hardered last Tuesday." Of course it did not come in 5 minutes, nor yet in 10 or 20, but that made it all the better when it came to the real presents, and the smell of it was enough to make an empty man thank God for the room there was inside him. 50 years have passed me quicker than the taste of that gravy. It is in the manner of all good boys to be careless in apparel, and take no pride in adornment. Good lack, if I see a boy make do about the fit of his crumpler, and the creasing of his breeches, and desire to be shod for the comeliness rather than for use, I cannot scape the mark that God took thought to make a girl of him. Not so when they grow older, and court the regard of the maidens. Then may the bravery pass from the inside to the outside of them, and no bigger fools are they, even then, than their fathers were before them. But God forbid any man to be a fool to love, and be loved as I have been, else would he have prevented it. When the mutton pasty was done, and Peggy and Smiler had dined well also, out I went to wash at the pump, being a lover of soap and water, at all risk, except of my dinner. And John Fry, who cared very little to wash, save Sabbath days in his own soap, and who had kept me from the pump by threatening loss of the dish, out he came in a satisfied manner, with a piece of quill in his hand, to lean against a door post, and listen to the horses feeding, and have his teeth ready for supper. Then a lady's maid came out, and the sun was on her face, and she turned round to go back again, but put a better face upon it, and gave a trip and hitched a dress, lest the hostlers should laugh that she was losing her complexion. With a long Italian glass in her fingers very daintily, she came up to the pump in the middle of the yard, where I was running the water off all my head and shoulders, and arms, and some of my breast even, and though I had glimpsed her through the sprinkle, it gave me quite a turn to see her, child as I was, in my open aspect. But she looked at me no whit abashed, making a baby of me no doubt, as a woman of 30 will do, even with a very big boy when they catch him on a hayrick, and she said to me in a brazen manner, as if I had been nobody, while I was shrinking behind the pump, and craving to get my shirt on: "Good leetle boy, come hither to me. Fine heaven, how blue your eyes are, and your skin like snow! But some naughty man has beaten it black. Oh, leetle boy, let me feel it. Ah, how then it must have hurt you! Then now, and you shall love me." All this time she was touching my breast here and there, very lightly, with her delicate brown fingers, and I understood from her voice and manner that she was not of this country, but a foreigner by extraction. And then I was not so shy of her, because I could talk better English than she, and yet I longed for my jerkin, and liked not to be rude to her. "If you please, madam, I must go. John Fry is waiting by the tapster's door, and Peggy neighing to me. If you please, we must get home tonight, and father will be waiting for me this side of the telling house." "There, there, you shall go, little dear, and perhaps I will go after you. I have taken much love of you. But the Baroness is hard to me. How far you call it now to the bank of the sea at At Watchet likely you mean, madam. Oh, a very long way, and the road's as soft as the road to Oare." Oh ah, I shall remember, that is the place where my little boy live, and some day I will come seek for him. Now to make the pump flow, my dear, and give me the good water. The Baroness will not touch unless a nebule be formed outside the glass." I did not know what she meant by that, yet I pumped for her very heartily, and marvelled to see her for 50 times throw the water away in the trough, as if it was not good enough. At last the water suited her, with the lightness of fog outside the glass, and the gleam of a crystal underneath it, and then she made a curtsy to me, in a sort of mocking manner, holding the long glass by the foot, not to take the cloud off, and then she wanted to kiss me, but I was out of breath, and have always been shy of that work, except when I come to offer it, and so I ducked under the pump handle, and she knocked her chin on the knob of it, and the hostlers came out and asked whether they would do as well. Upon this she retreated up the yard, with a certain dark dignity and a foreign way of walking, which stopped them at once from going farther, because it was so different from the fashion of their sweethearts. One with another they hung back, where half a cartload of hay was, and they looked to be sure that she would not turn round, and then each one laughed at the rest of them. Now up to the end of Dulverton town, on the northward side of it, where the 2 new pigsties be, the Oare folk and the Watchet folk must trudge on together, until we come to a broken cross, where a murdered man lies buried. Peggy and Smiler went up the hill, as if